Today I'm going to share with you my 5 favorite aquarium related products. Hey fish friends, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Zenzo from Tazawa Tanks. Now before we get into the video of my top 5 favorite aquarium related products, some of these items are not necessarily for aquariums, which you'll find out shortly, but still tremendously useful. And also I want to disclose that some of these items I did receive for free, and or I do have paid channel sponsorship, so there might be some correlation between what I'm talking about and my paid sponsor. However, these are products that I truly stand behind, and I love them regardless of whether I got them for free or not, and I would buy and pay for them with my very own money if ever there were a situation for me to do so. So anyway, with that being disclosed, I just want to be very upfront and transparent with all of you before we get into this list. So this will be in no particular order. I'm just listing 5 of my favorite aquarium related items. Now, these are not items that are like a must-have, like my life would be terrible without them, or I can't take care of aquariums without these products. They're just products that I've found to make my fish keeping much easier or more enjoyable. So with that being said, we're going to start off with one of the items, and that is the Casa Wi-Fi plugs or smart plugs. Now, it doesn't have to be this brand. These happen to be the ones that I use. Some I got for free, some I did purchase, and they are just an inexpensive plug, a smart plug that you can use and hook up different pieces of equipment, appliances, whatever to. Now, in my situation, I have all of my lights down here and upstairs now all set up on these smart plugs, so I can activate them with my phone app. I actually just recently set up my Google Home so that I can talk to my speaker in my home office and just say, you know, hey Google, turn on the aquarium lights in the office as an example, and they will just click right on. So very, very useful. It is a kind of a luxury item and a nice to have item, but it also is very useful in the fact that it does help you to create some consistencies within your aquarium. You can, you know, have lights on timers so you can really track, you know, like algae growth and ensure that the lights are only on when you want to enjoy the fish, or just long enough to grow plants but not have a lot of algae. You can have things to where a pump or a filter can turn off during feeding time, so maybe you have an automatic feeder that drops food every day at 2 p.m. as an example. You could have your smart plug turn off your power head or turn off your hang on a back filter or whatever at 1:45, let the food drop, and then turn back on at 2:30 or something once the food's been consumed. So very, very programmable, customizable, relatively inexpensive, but still kind of a nice luxury item, but is definitely on my list of my top 5 favorite aquarium related products. My next favorite product is an algae scraper. Now, even though I do have timers and pretty much my tanks are optimized to where I don't get a lot of algae, there will be some growth on the glass or the surfaces of the aquarium from time to time that I will need to clean up, especially because I am on YouTube, because I do share my tanks to millions of people, and whether it's here on Instagram or on YouTube, lots of people all over are viewing my aquariums, so I want to make sure that they present well, that they look nice, and when people come over, I want them to also enjoy what I have set up, and I also don't want to stare at a bunch of algae on the front of the glass either. So these algae scrapers are great. I use the MagFloat ones. I absolutely love them, especially the ones with the blades on them that allow me to very easily scrape off any kind of harder algae that might be forming on the glass. It comes right off. So I really, really do love these MagFloat algae scrapers. There are some other brands out there, but I really do like these ones, specifically because of the blades, but also they just do a great job of removing algae from the glass. My next favorite item is actually a fish food. Now, I have lots of different types of fish foods that I use: pellets, flakes, granules, frozen foods, fresh foods, live foods, etc. But there's one food that is my favorite. I've made a video about this before. I called it the one food to rule them all. And that is the Extreme Krill Flake. The Extreme Krill Flake is a flake food. It's nice because when you get it, it comes on very large flakes, but then you can also crumble it up to make it smaller for various size fish. So I can feed it to my peacocks, and I can also feed it to my tiny shell dweller fry and everything in between. It is a very high quality food. The fish love it. Some of the fish will eat it out of my hands, like my mud skippers. I can actually put it in my hand. They'll actually go in my hand and eat it off. A very good food, high quality food. I've made videos about this before, and it is high on my list of one of the best processed fish foods that I've ever used, ever. And it's so versatile, being able to take just one container of this krill food and krill flake and be able to go around to multiple tanks and feed lots of different fish with this flake. So my top fish food of all time that's processed, not like a live food or something, is the Extreme Krill Flake. My next favorite item is Aquarium Dechlorinator, water dechlorinator. My favorite is the Fritz products. Now, I am sponsored by Fritz, but before I was sponsored by Fritz, I was able to use their products and test their products. I've used lots of others. Theirs is phenomenal. I do like the fact that when you get the liquid version, it comes in a pump with a pump head, and you can squirt it. And every squirt, this is coming from Aquarium Co-op, when you order from them, they send it with a pump head, and every squirt does just enough to dechlorinate 10 gallons. So if you have a 30-gallon tank, 1, 2, 3, and then you're done. So it makes dechlorinating the water very, very, very easy. Now, where I live in San Francisco, we have chloramine, which means that there is no gassing off of the chlorine. There is no way of very easily filtering the water that I put into the aquariums through like a carbon block or anything, because chloramine is much, much more difficult to get rid of than chlorine, which you could gas off very easily or dilute or remove with resins and carbon. So with that being said, and because I have so many tanks and because I'm doing so many water changes, dechlorinating water is a must. In fact, I did a 125 today in my 75-gallon tank, and I had to dechlorinate, and so I grabbed my favorite Fritz products and used them right in the tank. Now, I use two different products. I use the ACCR, which is a powdered form, and I'll use that on some of the larger aquariums, and then I also use their liquid version, and I'll just use those in the pump as I shared earlier. Now, that brings us to my fifth favorite product that's aquarium related, and that is my sponge filters. Now, not just sponge filters in general. I do like sponge filters. They are in fact my favorite form of, well, they're my second favorite form of filtration, but because of economies of scale, because of expense, etc., because of their versatility and ease of use, they're kind of like 1 and 1A. My favorite's a sump because a sump is so cool, so versatile, but it can be challenging at times, and then you're moving water out of one aquarium into a sump and back in, and accidents happen. So I'm actually down to only one sump now in all of my systems. But I do love my sponge filters. This entire room is powered by air, which is all hidden behind the walls, and I have air lines going into all of my aquariums, and every aquarium that I have down here has a sponge filter. It is that easy, and my favorite product is the Aquarium Co-op sponge filter. Now, I know what you're saying, Zenzo, you're sponsored by Aquarium Co-op. Well, I'm not actually sponsored by them. They do provide me some products from time to time for me to test and try out, and they will, give me stuff. They did very graciously remodel this fish room. So I do acknowledge that I did pay for some of these, but I did buy some sponge filters in the past from them. But it's just a product that I do love very much, specifically for two reasons. The number one reason why I love these sponge filters is because of the porosity of the sponge itself. It's a very coarse sponge filter. For those of you that have used a lot of sponge filters, you know that they're great, but the finer the foam, the more dense the foam is, the easier it is for that sponge filter to clog, and the more maintenance is required to service that sponge filter. For a lot of you, that might not be a big deal if you've got 3 or 4 or 5 tanks, but for me with 30, a lot of them with multiple sponge filters in every aquarium, I don't want to be cleaning sponge filters every couple of weeks, which is what I had to do in the past because the fine ones just get clogged up, especially with some of these larger eaters, messier fish like the cichlids. With these coarser sponge filters, I'm having to service them a lot less frequently. They're still excellent for biological filtration, some mechanical filtration, and just really, really great to use. Now, I do realize that a finer sponge, one with more, more cells or whatever, a denser sponge is going to do better at particle filtration. But I can do particle filtration with other methods. I can vacuum out the tanks, etc. But also, the aquarium co-op sponge filters do also remove some of these particulates from the water. Maybe not as good as like a smaller, finer sponge filter, but the trade-off of not having to service that thing every couple of weeks makes a huge difference. So that's one of the reasons why I love those sponge filters. The other reason why I love their sponge filters is the fact that you can actually add an air stone inside the sponge filter, which you cannot do with others. So the way that their sponge filter is designed, underneath the nipple where you would put the air, there's a second nipple where you can put another short airline tubing and put an air stone inside the sponge filter. So not only do you have the excellent filtration capabilities of a sponge filter, but you also have an air stone in there, so you can control the size of the bubble, you can control the speed of the bubbles, well, not the speed, but how much air is getting pumped in. And it just does a phenomenal job, and I found that it does improve the dissolved oxygens in my aquariums by having those stones inside the sponge filter, so that I do have that additional oxygen in there. So anyway, those are the reasons why I love the sponge filters. Those are my top 5 items that I happen to use. Now, there's lots of other stuff that I love. Lots of other stuff that I need. Maybe there are things that are higher up on the hierarchy of needs than what I shared, but these are kind of the 5 things that either make my workflow much easier, more enjoyable, or I just feel that it really benefits my fish. So anyway, I would love to read down below your thoughts on my 5. Is there anything that you feel doesn't deserve to be on this list? Like I know that the Wi-Fi plugs are kind of a nice to have, but not a need to have. But for me, it does make a big difference. But anyway, comment down below your thoughts on my list. And also comment down below what you think should also be included in the list. That's all I had for now. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.